Every person has a story. The story of what you did yesterday, the story of your last vacation, the story of your childhood. To tell these stories, you need a time machine. In English grammar, that time machine is called the simple past tense. But this time machine has two different engines. One is easy and predictable, the engine for regular verbs. The other is wild, powerful, and unpredictable, the engine for irregular verbs. To be a great storyteller, you must master both. Welcome back to our series, English Grammar Unlocked. I'm your host, Scarlett. Today, we are traveling back in time to one of the greatest moments in human history to master the most important tense for storytelling, the simple past. In this episode, we will turn a grammar lesson into an epic adventure. First, we will relive the historic story of the first moon landing in 1969, listening for the verbs that made history. Second, we will master 10 essential vocabulary words about space and exploration. And finally, we will break down the crucial difference between regular and irregular past tense verbs, so you can tell your own stories with clarity and confidence. Part 1. The Launch. Regular Verbs. Our story begins on a hot summer day in Florida, on July 16, 1969. The world was watching. This was the day of the Apollo 11 mission. 3 brave astronauts, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, prepared for the most dangerous journey in human history. Their mission was to travel across space and be the first humans to walk on the moon. Millions of people watched on their televisions. They waited and they prayed. The giant Saturn V rocket stood on the launch pad. It needed incredible power to escape Earth's gravity. Inside the control room, hundreds of engineers and scientists monitored their screens. They checked every detail. The world listened to the calm voice of the mission controller. He counted down the final seconds. 10, 9, 8. The engines ignited with a deafening roar. Fire and smoke covered the launch pad. The rocket launched into the bright blue sky. It traveled faster and faster, a tiny white dot carrying the dreams of all mankind. Let's pause our story right there, as Apollo 11 leaves the Earth. Did you notice all of those action words? Watched, waited, prayed, needed, monitored, checked, listened, counted, ignited, covered, launched, traveled. They all have one thing in common. They all end in id. These are called regular verbs. They are the good students of English grammar. They always follow the rule. To change a regular verb to the simple past tense, you simply add ed to the end of the base verb. Watch becomes watched. Listen becomes listened. It's simple and predictable. There are a few small spelling rules to remember. For verbs that end in e, you just add d, like live becomes lived. For verbs that end in a consonant plus y, you change the I to I and add ed, like study becomes studied. And for some short verbs, you double the final consonant, like plan becomes planned. But the basic idea is always the same. Add ed. About 70% of English verbs are regular. They are the reliable engine of our time machine. Part 2. The Eagle has landed. Irregular verbs. Now, let's get back to our story. For 3 days, the astronauts traveled through the black emptiness of space. Finally, they arrived at the moon. 2 of the astronauts, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, moved into a smaller spacecraft. Its name was the Eagle. Their job was to land this small ship on the moon's surface, while their teammate Michael Collins stayed in orbit. The Eagle flew down towards the moon. Suddenly, an alarm went off. The computer was in trouble. Neil Armstrong, a man with incredible calm and courage, took manual control of the spacecraft. He saw that the landing area was dangerous, full of big rocks. He expertly found a new, safe place to land. With only seconds of fuel left, he put the spacecraft down gently on the surface of the moon. He spoke into the radio, and his calm words went across space to a listening world. He said, "The Eagle has landed." It was one of the most historic moments of all time. Let's pause again. Let's look at the verbs in that part of the story. Flew, went, was, took, saw, found, put, spoke, said. Do any of these end in -ed? No. These are the irregular verbs. They are the rebels of English grammar. They do not follow the rules. For these, verbs, the past tense form is completely different from the base form. Go becomes went. See becomes saw. Take becomes took. There are no easy rules for irregular verbs. We simply have to learn and memorize them. This is the biggest challenge of the simple past tense, but it is also what makes the language interesting. Many of the most common verbs in English, like to be, to have, to do, to go, and to say, are irregular. The story continues. Neil Armstrong opened the hatch. He went down the ladder. He put his left foot on the dusty surface of the moon. Then he said his famous, unforgettable words. That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Buzz Aldrin came down, after him. The two men spent about 2 hours outside. They took pictures. They collected moon rocks. They left an American flag on the surface. They did their job perfectly. Part 3. The Journey Home, Mixing Regular and Irregular. Now, let's see how these two types of verbs work together to tell the rest of the story. After their historic moonwalk, the astronauts prepared for the journey home. They climbed back inside the Eagle. The engine fired perfectly. The small spacecraft lifted off from the moon and flew back up into orbit. It reconnected with the main spacecraft, where their patient teammate, Michael Collins, was waiting for them. The three heroes were together again. They began the long 3-day trip back to Earth. The world waited anxiously. Finally, on July 24th, their tiny capsule streaked across the sky and splashed down safely in the Pacific Ocean. The mission was a complete success. They became global heroes. They showed the world that with courage, teamwork, and hard work, even the most impossible dreams could become reality. Part 4. Language Focus. Let's move to our language focus. First, let's master 10 essential vocabulary words from this historic mission. Our first word is mission. A mission is an important job that someone is sent somewhere to do. For example, the Apollo 11 mission was to land a man on the moon. Another example is, the spy was sent on a secret mission. Our second word is astronaut. An astronaut is a person who is trained to travel in a spacecraft. For example, Neil Armstrong was the first astronaut to walk on the moon. Another example is, she dreams of becoming an astronaut one day. Our third word is spacecraft. A spacecraft is a vehicle used for traveling in space. For example, the Eagle was the name of the spacecraft that landed on the moon. Another example is, the spacecraft will travel to Mars. Next, we have to launch. To launch means to send something, like a rocket or a spacecraft, into the sky or into space. For example, millions of people watch the rocket launch on TV. Another example is, the company plans to launch a new satellite next year. Our fifth word is to land. To land means to arrive on the ground or another surface after a journey through the air or space. For example, the most difficult part of the mission was to land the spacecraft safely. Another example is, the airplane will land in 10 minutes. The sixth phrase is giant leap. A giant leap is a very big and important improvement or progress. For example, the moon landing was a giant leap for mankind. Another example is, the invention of the internet was a giant leap for communication. Our seventh word is mankind. Mankind means the entire human race. For example, the message on the plaque they left on the moon was, "We came in peace for all mankind." Another example is, climate change is a threat to all of mankind. Next, we have historic. Historic means famous or important in history. For example, July 20th, 1969 is a historic date. Another example is, we are visiting a historic building today. Our ninth word is to explore. To explore means to travel to a place in order to learn about it. For example, the astronauts were the first humans to explore the surface of the moon. Another example is, I love to explore new cities when I travel. And our final word is to return. To return means to come or go back to a place. For example, everyone celebrated when the astronauts returned safely to Earth. Another example is, she will return home after she finishes her studies. Now, let's do a final review of our grammar focus. The simple past tense. As we learned, this tense has two types of verbs. Regular verbs are predictable. You add ed. Watch becomes watched. Land becomes landed. Explore becomes explored. Irregular. Verbs are unpredictable. They do not follow the ed rule. You must memorize them. Go becomes went. See becomes saw. Is becomes was. Take becomes took. Say becomes said. Knowing the most common irregular verbs is a key to unlocking your ability to tell stories in English. Part 5. Practice tips for the 4 skills. Now, how can you practice telling your own stories? For listening, find a short documentary clip on YouTube about the moon landing or another historic event. Listen carefully for all the past tense verbs. Make 2 lists in your notebook. One for the regular, ed verbs you hear, and one for the irregular verbs. For speaking, tell your AI tutor a short story about something interesting you did yesterday. Use your voice. Your challenge is to use at least 3 regular verbs and 2 irregular verbs. For example, yesterday I watched a movie. I saw my friend there. We talked for an hour. Then I went home. It was a good day. For reading, the history section of any Wikipedia page about a person, place, or event you are interested in is a goldmine. It is almost always written in the simple past tense. It's fantastic practice. And for writing, use your journal to write a short story about a memorable event from your childhood. It could be your first day of school, a special birthday, or a family trip. When you are finished, go back and circle all the past tense verbs you used. Part 6. Your next action. The simple past tense is the key to unlocking every story. It is the time machine that allows you to share your past, your experiences, your challenges, and your victories. Just like the astronauts of Apollo 11, your own life is a historic journey, full of important moments. Now, you have the grammatical tools to share that story with the world. As we conclude, let's summarize our mission today. First, we relived the inspiring story of the first moon landing and saw how the simple past tense brings history to life. Second, we learned the crucial difference between the two engines of the past tense, the reliable regular verbs and the rebellious irregular verbs. We also learned 10 essential vocabulary words for this adventure. As a review, those words were mission, astronaut, spacecraft, to launch, to land, giant leap, mankind, historic, to explore, and to return. Now, I have a final question for you. What did you do yesterday? Tell us one thing in the comments below, using a past tense verb. If you are committed to making this lesson a part of your life, show your energy by smashing that like button. Be a hero for a friend by sharing this video with someone who loves history and stories. And to lock in your commitment to learning, subscribe and smash that notification bell so you don't miss our next workout. Remember, your story is important. And now you know how to tell it. Until next time, take care and happy learning.